pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Heavenly Father, we just ask you to be with us tonight as we conduct our meeting. We just thank you for this day. We just thank you for all that you do for us. We just ask you to give us the wisdom and to guide us to make the right decisions for our citizens. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
I'd like to call this evening's council meeting to order. We'll begin with roll call.
Foster.
Here.
Elliott. Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Here.
Newkirk.
Here.
Crabtree.
Here.
Pop.
Here.
The chair would like to entertain a motion to excuse Mr. Elliott, who's away on vacation this week.
I'll make the
Motion by Ms. Colby. Is there a second? And second by Mr. Newkirk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Mayor, any recognitions this evening?
No, sir.
Thank you. So we have two visitors, two really neat visitors for us this evening signed up to speak. And so we will start with Ms. Kay Howe. So if you'll step to the microphone, Ms. Howe, we'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for letting me be here to represent all the pickleball players of our community. So something so fun, right? So not that long ago, picked tennis back up again. And then somebody asked me to go try pickleball. And I thought it's not going to measure up to tennis. But I gave it a shot. And lo and behold, it was really, really fun. So they're currently playing, this pickleball group is playing at the YMCA in the gymnasium. And it's limited time and limited space. And there's no real place to play outside. So, of course, there's the YMCA tennis courts. But that's used for the high school kids. So the only other option we have right now is down at Eddie Jones. And I know that that's not an ideal place because of the flooding. So ideally, we would have new courts up on a hill that wouldn't flood, and it would be great. But that's going to take a lot of time and money to get there. So in the meantime, there's a group of us that are trying to work to bring the Eddie Jones courts to life. And we think we can do it with relatively small dollars. So our group is willing to go down there and clear off the courts. There's a business in town that has insurance and workers' comp and all that stuff. Willing to go down there and clear them off. Of course, we'd need the keys to the gate. And raise money for new poles and nets. And what we're asking the city to do is take the existing poles out. And then when we fund it, and we get the money for the new poles and nets, we'll put them back in. We need the city to put the poles back. So that's really the two things we need from the city. And then the group of us will make sure they're striped and keep the courts clean for going forward. So I made this as short and sweet as possible. But that's our request from the city, is just to take the poles out and put the poles back, and we'll do the rest. Okay. So.
Mr. Sparkhammer.
Yeah, when we spoke,
Mm-hmm.
what, a week or so ago?
Right.
You hadn't hooked up yet with an organization.
Right.
You say you have hooked up?
We have
with
not,
an
and we can do it through a nonprofit,
Okay.
but we have not gotten that far.
But you have an entity that is insured, that is willing to come in and help do the work?
Yes, with some elbow grease and manpower to, like, it's basically the two end courts have the debris on them. I'm sure you're familiar, but the middle courts aren't that bad. So if we can get the debris off the end courts and power wash them and raise the funds for the nets and poles, which aren't that expensive, it'll be a few $1,000s to get.
And those volunteers, you guys would be fine signing the waivers and stuff so that the
Totally.
city's not liable?
Totally.
Since you're not hooked up with
Correct.
somebody that is?
Correct.
Okay.
And I don't know how much time I have left.
You're good.
All right,
You're all
but like pickleball, I didn't know anything about it. And so in watching YouTube, found out it began in 1965. And with this family that only had wiffle balls and ping pong paddles and a dog named Pickles. And so they were out behind their house and they made up rules to this game. And now there's 36 million Americans playing this game. And at the Y, I think there's like 40 people playing. So it's really, really fun. and it's easy for people, whether you're 10 or, 70 years old, to play. So it's fun, it includes people, it's really a nice thing. And I will say one more thing, there's a boy down at the Y who says pickleball night's his favorite night of the week because he gets to come play, so, I mean, it's really fun, so.
Is that Pat Eichenagel
He said young boy.
Right? And I gotta say, I didn't even know Pat really until this whole thing. And he was great to explain the game. And he's the one that brought this to the town. I don't know if you know that, like 10 years ago. So we appreciate all he's done.
Yeah.
So
May I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I would like to say that our best pickleball player is on your council, H.D. Grafton. No one can beat him. I want you to be aware of that.
That sounds like a challenge.
One other comment, if I may. There are actually people who leave our community and go play in Athens Saturday and Sunday. So we have people who are leaving our community to go to other communities and spending their dollars in other communities at restaurants and entertainment. They could be spending that money here if we had a place for them to play.
From the service director's side, if we get the waivers, since there's no insurance tied to their organization, and the little bit of labor that they are asking for from the city, I would like to see those courts used a lot more than they are, and I think this is a great opportunity. Mr. Reed, you started to say something.
I just was wondering you were saying poles removed and poles replaced. What are the poles? Are the
like
tennis standards, like
Yes, yes.
take those out?
yes, because they
and
don't,
put-
the ones that are there are broken.
Okay,
You can't tighten anything, the cranks don't work, or they're not even attached and they're bent. They're not fixable. So I even thought about having somebody from our office try to repair them, but they're not repairable.
I do have one follow-up question.
Uh-huh.
People who want to play tennis, they're still going to be able to play tennis
Yeah,
on
we
these
would stripe
courts,
it for
right?
tennis too.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I
right.
wanted to make sure we wouldn't,
Yeah,
okay.
yes.
Mr. Bob?
I would say desperate for something on TV the other day, and I come across pickleball on ESPN, and it really fascinated me, and I think it's something that, is not available other than Athens, is that right?
Chillicothe.
Right. Athens
But I mean, it could possibly lead to tournaments and whatnot, so it's really something that is something that, it would be good for the city, the community, all other businesses, and maybe John McEnroe would come here, because he plays.
Yeah, if you have the chance to watch him play, it's really fun.
Yeah.
Really fun, so. And we'll invite all you guys down to play, right? Yeah.
Now, I know during our conversation and tonight, you had mentioned the future dream. So what's the plan to help get to the future
I
dream?
know, right? Find the land, find the money, I know. I bet you have a lot more insight there than I do, but. Right?
It's a challenge.
There are grants that are available. Didn't Oak Hill recently put some quotes in with a grant, I think? And so I think that we have some people who are willing to look for some grants to help out with that too, to find some land.
Well, what you're asking for, Kay, is not very much. We can certainly help you out with that. We appreciate the willingness of you and other volunteers to help make things nicer in our city,
Cool. Thank you.
especially for the old folks that play pickleball.
And one more point, the world champion is only like 16 years old, so.
Yeah, at anything.
That's fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Peters?
Just a couple quick questions. I think it's a great idea. Any investment into the park there would be a great idea. My only concern is if we, you guys do this work, we do this all taken care of, then how do we make sure that it stays in good shape? Do we lock it up?
I'm not a fan of keeping it locked because it's hard enough at the Y when those courts are locked.
Do we have any way, I know there's cameras around in other areas, I don't know about the park. Is there any way, because I'd hate to see the investment be destroyed. That would be my only concern, because, it is kind of out of the way. You have to really drive down Harding Avenue and look back that way to see those. I just would hate to see, is there any way we can improve lighting or something like that, so we could help, if this does happen, protect the investment that is made, so we can keep it going.
Yeah, most of the damage isn't vandalism, it's more flood related.
May I? City, not this group, but Bill Scher, we wrote up an agreement once, and I got those courts back together. I painted them, painted the lines on them, and what ended up happening is just the weather deteriorates that place. Water deteriorates, and then you have a little vandalism going on. And we surely will work on some thoughts for you on that. I will say one other thing, it is the fastest growing sport there is. It is professional now, like football, baseball, and basketball. And I'm glad you're taking an interest.
And just one other comment to that. I work in Logan, and they have the luxury of playing indoors at their community center, so maybe we could get one of those.
Yeah, let me just wait for a second. So that's the importance of the new poles. What needs to be done is that those nets have to be taken down when winter gets close. That's really what destroyed the old nets, is that they just stayed there through the winter, year after year after year. So when you have new posts in place, that enables us to take the nets down and put them away for storage, probably like December, January, February, something like that. That keeps the nets in the posts in good working order, because the reason the posts actually get broken is because when the nets stay up too long, people will try to make them work. You know, they'll use tools and stuff, and I've seen on one of the posts we look at, there was actually some strapping they used to try to keep the net tight. But the posts need to function so that we can keep the nets nice.
Other comments? Thank you, Kay. Next to speak to us this evening is Mr. George Davis. George, if you'd like to step up there, we'll set you up for 5. And
all right, thank you guys for hearing me out. I talked a little bit with Mr. Swackhammer today, and I think through the process, and I called Dan, I want to bring this to council's attention, but at the same time, I'm just trying to solve an issue. Basically, through some investigating of the Davis Family Limited Partnership, which is the youth store here in Jackson, we found out that our Mayhew property is zoned B3. And according to B3, storage units are not allowed, or it's not in the B3, it's in industrial. Through the process of talking with Mr. Swackhammer, when looking some stuff up myself, we had actually purchased the property in 2001 with the full intention of putting storage units on it. In 2002 is when the city annexed it, but I guess it was 2003 before the auditors actually reported buildings on the property down at Mayhew. So I know there's some things through the zoning committee that may have to go to that or to an appeals. I'm just trying to find direction or being able to get it grandfathered, or basically just to figure out what I need to do to try to settle this issue so in the future, for any reason, it won't be an issue, is basically what I'm trying to do.
Mr. Swackhammer, I know you and I talked a little bit about it today, so.
We did. How Mr. Davis and I were speaking on the phone, I looked up the 22 ordinance where we allowed some of the B1, 2, and 3s to go over into I, but there's nothing in there that allows I's to go back to a B1, 2, or 3. So in his situation here, the industrial, the I, is the only one that shows the storage units in it. Yeah. And so there is not currently something on the book. So there's a couple variances here. One, you'd always rezone it. We have gotten away from spot zoning, which would be an I in the middle of B3s. but similar to what we did in 22, where we extended some of the items from the B1, 2s, and 3 up into the Is, I think council could look at allowing some of the proper things out of the Is, maybe to come back to the B1s, B2s, or B3s. In this situation, his being the storage unit and other things, I don't think you would want everything that's in an I to come back to a B1, 2, or 3. It just wouldn't be appropriate, but I believe there are some items that it would be possible and not be disruptive to the community.
Mr. President, I thought that was our intention, though, is to allow that to happen, just it go through the Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
Is that not in there? I thought we agreed to go from I to B or B to I. You just had to file an appeal with the board.
I thought so too, but I haven't read it again. I wasn't aware of this until right before the meeting tonight, so I don't know. We'll have to look into that again. I become aware of this right before the meeting and talked to Georgie, and I told him he was just gonna have to move the historic building. So, he didn't really like that thought, but I think that's the only way to really clear it up.
Thanks.
No, I'm kidding. But I did tell him, if it's not a problem for him, it's not a problem for us, because we have, as we discussed last year and the year before, we have many instances where things were put in not according to the proper zoning, and he said, could it be grandfathered? Well, I mean, unofficially, we grandfathered all of that because we don't try to do anything about it. If it was, what's done is done. We do try to keep a pretty tight watch on new things and make sure that they are into the proper zones and proper type, but I'm not sure if he really needs something to happen, but we can take a look at it, and we can look at that ordinance that we did try to make it so that people aren't in the wrong zone. Like the ordinance you mentioned that we did, I think, last year. So we'll look at that and see, we might need to clarify it a little bit further for situations like this.
The intention of that was to help business owners, property owners.
Right, I agree.
Back in the Wild West days.
To give them a process.
Right, because I don't know if that would affect if he tried to sell his property or something like that. That definitely needs to get fixed.
It might, and as time goes on, it
Right.
probably more likely to, even as people look at that more and more these days, it seems like. Not just us, but,
Actually, that was one of the points my tax attorney kind of made out. He said if you ever did want to sell this, he said that could definitely be a sticking point.
So we'll look at it and see what we can do to help you out, George.
At present, we do
Yeah,
have,
we have a meeting scheduled for
Yeah,
next
we-
Monday. Could you just?
it's the 24th, I think.
Oh, 2 Mondays.
Yeah, so we do have a zoning appeals meeting set now on the 24th. We have 2 items that are coming before the board. So let us research, and it's maybe a third, and so we could
Is
bring
that
it to.
something I should be at?
I would recommend it because some of the folks that are on the zoning appeals board are not council members. There
Okay.
are some, really, we were hoping to have it this evening, but Mr. Elliott is the chair. But there are, Sid Smith is on the zoning appeals, Bob Mayhew is on there,
Phil Howard.
and Phil Howard.
Yeah.
So those 3, along with 3 council members, kind of make that up, so, but.
Okay. I'd say, rather than going through the zoning board of appeals, if the current ordinance doesn't allow it, I'd rather see a revision to that. That way we don't have to keep doing the one-offs.
Okay.
We get it in there so it's taken care of once and for all.
I thought we did.
Yeah,
that.
once I said, we'll just have Joe take a look at it.
Okay.
And if so, then we can report that back and we can go ahead and get with Mr. Davis and let him know. But, these one-offs, we should try to avoid, and because it is, like I said, was part of the intention.
Yeah.
And we took care of it for B1, 2, and 3, being able to be across the board, including things out of I, but I kind of got left out here the way I read it. So,
As I recall, there were two separate ordinances, one of them for industrial, and it was to address the specific issues over in the area plus apartments uptown. So I don't think it was ever worked backwards.
right.
So that could be, but like you said, you'd want to do it very selectively. And if you're going to do that, it'll need to go to the planning commission.
So give us a couple days to figure it all out and see who's on first and who's on second. And we can probably still get something scheduled for that Monday night, either whether it's an ordinance or planning or zoning, all three are meeting.
When's the other planning commission that meeting?
It's 22nd. All of them are the 22nd.
You're doing both the planning commission and the zoning appeals board?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's all scheduled for the next council meeting.
Okay, and what time would that be? So, here?
6 o'clock on the 22nd.
Okay. Thank you.
George, come here for the morning.
Thank you, George. Thank you all for attending this evening.
Y'all are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like. Go over by pickleball, right?
Next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from April the 24th. Any objections or corrections to the minutes as presented to council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Peters.
under the service committee,
Can't hear what you're saying.
where it says suggested charge on repairs to state route facing curbs and sidewalks not be included in income tax funds, I would like to strike not on there. I think I said that they could be, strike not. The way the record reflects what I actually said or intended.
Okay.
I don't have it shown here.
Under the service committee, it's just it's next to the last sentence, just after facing curbs and sidewalks, just strike the word not.
And if for clarity, we agreed that would be as long as there was an income tax in place.
Move to change that, to strike not and, while taxes are imposed on that.
You have it? Okay. Any other?
I need a second on his amendment.
Yeah, I move, so,
Okay. Is there a second? Mr. Newkirk, second. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried.
Now we need to approve the minutes.
Yeah, I'll move to, accept the amended minutes as well.
Second. Mr. Crabtree. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Next on our agenda is the committee reports. We'll begin with utility. Mr. Newkirk.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Newkirk. Budget and fire. Ms. Colby.
No report.
Thank you, Ms. Colby. Police, fire, and traffic. Mr. Foster.
I have no report.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Service, Mr. Peters.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Mr. Reed, auditor's report.
There's two ordinances tonight, 23 and 24, they're companion. These are setting up the cash reserve for the garbage, sewer, and electric. Council had, we had done the electric, the garbage, sewer, and water. We had done the electric a couple years ago, and everybody felt that there should be a fund for each, a reserve fund that's just used in the case of emergency. This is the first installment to those funds. Within 2, max of 3 years, they'll be fully funded. So that's what this is doing, is just fulfilling what council passed as far as setting up those reserve funds. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Questions for Mr. Reed? Mr. Kirby.
I have nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Mayor's report, Mayor Evans.
A few things to report on a project update. We did, well, you'll see it, it's an ordinance, a resolution tonight. We did receive, last Friday, or a week ago Friday, I'm sorry, our bids for our summer street paving project. We did receive 3 bids. They were within our estimated amount, and so we'll be moving forward with that tonight. talk more about that if you have questions when we get to that. We met last week with Justin McCauley from McCauley and Company. He is a strategic consulting and professional services, has his own company out of Cleveland. And we met with him. He was, you might recall, we talked about we had applied for and had made it to the first cut in receiving some congressionally directed spending from our U.S. Senator Brown's office. And he's proposing to help us further that along as a consultant and as a lobbyist type. So we're waiting to hear a proposal from him. That might be something that we want to move ahead with, to try to help us gain an advantage on pursuing some of that funding. Our application was funding for improvements and remodeling to the memorial building as it continues to decline, and we're going to need to do something with it in the coming years. So we'll know more about that in the next week or so, probably by the next council meeting, whether we want to pursue that or not. We had received a grant on to make improvements out at Hammertown. I just wanted to update you that because I haven't in a while. Where that was also that was capital bill money grant that we got, and Representative Stevens helped us with it last year. It's in the engineer's hands. They hope to have the designs done this week. We've met with them and done some revisions the last couple weeks. So they hope to have that in the next week or two. They have to submit it to ODNR then for approval. So that is still in the works. It's coming. It's just the wheels move slowly. That's a new boat ramp and a kayak launch that will be out of Hammertown. So just wanted to update you on that. That's all I had today.
Thank you, Mayor. Questions for the mayor? Mayor, I do have a question, point of interest, or information for myself. In regards to the blacktopping that we have, is the police parking lot eligible? Are parking lots owned by the city eligible for these things, or is it streets only?
Yeah. Actually, you mean for use of the tax money? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, any of our infrastructure in town really is.
Because the lot is, the police lot out here is struggling a little bit.
I know.
And so
I know.
it could use a little TLC, I think.
They were lobbying to get that paved last year, actually.
Okay.
It's just a matter of priorities, Dan.
Okay.
And, you know, from the beginning, I said, listen, the city properties are going to be lower in priority than the high-use city streets.
Sure.
And that's where we're at. We don't have it on for this year, but I'm hoping maybe next year.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, I appreciate it. Service Director, Mr. Swackhammer.
Yeah, I got a few items to go over. If you will remember, a couple years ago, those of you around, there was several city properties that were given to the city through FEMA purchases, and we had looked into what we could do with those properties. So although there was no deed restrictions filed on them at that transfer, we have been able to get a hold of what those deed restrictions are and should it be. And it doesn't really allow you to do much with them. So one of the options is putting in a, what do I want to say, what did we call it earlier, Mayor? Into like a set-aside program that the city could do a self-conservation land, and we can do that. And then also we can use the tree commission to help us go in and plant a lot of trees in these areas, and so that you're not have to continue to mow them all the time, which is what we're doing. We know that you may need to mow for a while, but once some of these trees get big enough, the grass underneath is going to slow down, and we really do not have very many conservation areas within inside the city. And we think this would be a good use of these FEMA properties. They're in floodways or flood zones. You're not going to be able to develop them in those type of ways. And just like council's thoughts on that, if it's something that we should look at developing and adopting, is some type of conservation area for these FEMA properties so that we could then, like I said, come in and plant trees and let them go back to nature a little bit. Control the right-of-ways as far as, you know, keeping off the street so far mowed and cleaned up, but let them continue to go back. So that was one item that I'd kind of like to put down for new business discussions. Cindy, if you would, please. Also, Horizon has approached the city with a interest in putting up a small, it's an enclosed container of about on a 10-foot by 10-foot type area over by Hillcrest Pool, where they can run their new cable filter or fiber, thank you. Fiber too. I've got pictures here of it. They would be willing to lease that on for a 20-year lease, $1,000 a year lease, and then with the option of another $1,000 per year for the next 20 years. I've had Joe take a look at it. There's a couple questions that he has that we'd like to get clarity. First thing that they're wanting is an easement agreement, but if you guys will allow us to pursue that, see if we'll make the changes that Mr. Kirby's suggestion is suggesting, and then we'll bring it back to council. And so I've got a copy of it here. I'll give it to Cindy to send out to everyone so they can look at it. Just need to get back to us as quickly as possible. And maybe, Mr. Kirby, if you don't mind mentioning some of the items on here that you would like to see changed as well, so that when they get it, they'll know what's actually on your mind on that.
I think some of them have been taken care of with the amount of money and the size. That wasn't in the original one. The other was a perpetual,
Thanks, Joe. I'm glad I'm not the only one tonight.
Exclusive. They were looking for an exclusive easement, which, depending on how they read it, could keep us from using it other ways. So I don't think that's their intent, but that can be changed. Those are really the main issues.
Okay. So I'm gonna, if you'll pass that down to Cindy. Cindy, if you'll get that out to council to look at. And if council can give us some feedback prior to next meeting, that way we may be able to bring some legislation to council on the next meeting once you've had a chance to look at it. That is, unless you want to listen to Mr. Kirby.
That's why we pay Mr. Kirby. So, I've spoken on this several times. I'm glad that this is finally happening. Fiber is very important for economic growth. It's good for building a population as well, because believe it or not, younger people will move somewhere else if there's not fast, high-speed internet or an option. So I'm all for it. I'll let Mr. Kirby sort out the legal stuff.
So we'll go ahead and bring something to council then to vote on for next meeting. And between now and then, Mr. Kirby can draft a couple letters, see if we can get them to revise in the areas of concern. And all right?
All right.
Okay. Let's see, next item. The city has posted for bid its commercial and liability insurance. So that one got posted on our websites last Friday. It should be in the newspaper, I believe it's Wednesday, Saturday, and next Wednesday coming up. So bid opening is first or 2nd of June, I believe it's that Friday, which would be the 2nd. is going to be the bid opening on that. We did update some of the values, we've updated the property list. A lot of the other things remained the same on there because we haven't really bought any new properties, and Lilly and Jones is a part of that, and they get provided their itemized list and stuff in there as well. Let's see, Mayor's already done that one. What else do we have? Real estate, 2 years ago, the city had, through council, had gotten approval to sell several parcels that the city owned throughout the city that we thought we had value for, or people might. We have one here that didn't sell at the time that has now got interest. We are going to post for sealed bid. We're not going to go through the auction process for sealed bid. I will be posting this on our site and through the local newspaper. We'll run ads for a couple weeks also to sell that one parcel. So that's, in case you see it out there and want to know what was, whether or not we have permission to sell it. Permission was given a couple years ago to sell this parcel.
Mr. Schweikhammer, what's the address on that?
There is no, it's a 0 Mitchell, but its parcel number, if you want that, it's H140002300. If you look that parcel number up on the county auditor's site, that same number is for a parcel north of and south of Mitchell. As we advertised back then, we're only selling the parcel on the north side. We are not selling the parcel on the south side of there. And that's how it was advertised in the original bid. I have a copy of the notice when we bid it the last time.
Mr. Kirby?
Question. Is there a separate legal for each side of the street?
There is a lot number. One has
Oh,
a
okay.
different lot number than the other. And I'll be glad to give you a copy of this afterwards if you like. What else do we have here? Under new business, I'll have a couple utility permit requests that we can go over. Let's see, we also have some questions on a lot split that came up. And Mr. Kirby, I think you've had a chance to look into that. Do you want to, is that something that we have here to bring to council, or have we made a decision on what the city's position really is on this?
So I was looking at that today. The city, there's no prohibition for having landlocked property in Ohio. You can buy it and you can sell it unless certain planning commissions and all prohibit it. Jackson, for example, and most county planning commissions don't like you to buy or sell landlocked property. Jackson doesn't have anything that specifically says. I was looking at whether you could read into so much frontage for parking and all of that, but there's no prohibition that I came across in the planning code or ordinances that said you can't have landlocked property. With that being said, we really don't have to do anything to that. They may have some perceived difficulty in getting it recorded, but that's them misinterpreting what's supposed to happen. They're shoehorning it into the way it would normally work for the county. I suppose the city could look to change its requirements for landlocked property. I myself like to have as little government involvement in what you can buy and sell as possible, because there are ways that it can be, an easement would be granted. For example, the same owner owns both these lots right now. He could easily put an easement across one of them. If he uses it and he sells the other parcel, by law, there's going to be an implied easement. It's not a written easement, but somebody could go and challenge that. If they owned it and so a new owner next to them said, it's now landlocked and you can't cross my property, they could stop that. So there are remedies. But right now, I mentioned I'd called the county engineer to see if there was anything anything that I could say that we don't have any action to take and it could go through. So I've not heard back, so. That was really kind of the extent of it right now. I don't know that there's anything that would need to happen except for enacting something that clearly says it can or can't be landlocked.
Okay, thank you. I do have another item that'll need to go to the zoning board of appeals. Actually, Mr. Elliott himself, he and I had spoken, and we've outlined what we believe the items that need to be addressed. I need a chance to review it. Cindy, I'll be getting you a copy of that to include in there as well, so that we can address it next time around. How many items does that now give us for zoning board of appeals? 2?
That's 2, and then whatever Mr. Davis is okay.
Okay. And the planning committee meeting was scheduled for what time originally?
6.
And the zoning at
6:30.
Are we going to be able to address 3 items in that short a period of time?
And
I think we could run them together.
if we find something in there that talks about road frontage and zoning, that could be another one that gets added to their
Okay.
plate too.
So I would just ask to think about maybe retiming some of those. The last item that I have is, it's that time of year again for mowing and weed control. The city had updated its ordinances around mowing, and with a 12-inch height limitation. We've been very, I'll say, generous this spring, but we are going to start looking at and enforcing those properties that are in very much out of compliance, and begin to work our way through the season. So it's not like we're picking and choosing, but we're going to go after the worst of the worst first and continue to try to work at getting those cleaned up, and hopefully the neighbors will take care of themselves. It's not our intention to go out there and penalize or take a yardstick to each property.
Questions from Mr. Sweckhammer? Mr. Sweckhammer, the chair has one question. Could you update us on the tearing down of buildings? If you got a schedule, or have you heard any more about some of the city?
He asked me, but you can go right ahead, boss.
Oh,
That's
no.
good news.
No, we don't have any schedule. The land bank awarded the contracts, gave a notice to proceed, and now it's up to the contractor. They have 90 days or whatever. There's no schedule to control there. They work it at their own schedule.
I do know that the city has issued 13 demo permits in the last couple of weeks. We also, I met with a contractor down on Water Street at corner of Water and Portsmouth. And if you drive down Water, you might notice a lowboy trailer in there with a mini hoe on it. So they're in the process of trying to get those 2 facilities cleaned up, which will be greatly appreciated.
Greatly appreciated.
There is a big excavator sitting right next to the one that you're probably most concerned about, but everyone is, the old Bell Bonds building.
Yes. Well, they've got the sidewalk completely blocked off, so you can't, there's no egress that can occur there, and it's a crowded area, and
It's gonna happen soon.
One thing
We've been working on it for 3.5 years. It's gonna happen soon.
One thing I will mention about that property, so everyone is aware, that was considered a hot property, meaning there was asbestos either found or presumably been there. So the contractor that is removing that, he has to wait till a window opens up so that he can take that, and he has to dispose of it in a certain time frame. I've already talked to the sheriff's office and the jail. We will be blocking part of those streets as they will need to control dust, during the time it's being demoed. We will not want anyone parking in close proximity. So once we know exactly what window that is that he's been given to demo that and then take that and dispose of it, we'll get that out as widely as we can. We'll put it on our Facebook sites. will contact Sheriff's Office, ask him to do the same. Pete will probably reach out to you guys if you'll help us get the message out as well. And I think everybody would be delighted to see it go, but we don't want spectators watching it go for that very reason.
Anything else from Mr. Schwackhammer? Thank you, Mr. Schwackhammer. Now we'll go into the ordinance and resolutions portion of our meeting. We will begin ordinance on first reading with ordinance 2323. Ms. Coon.
An ordinance approving additional appropriations in the various water, sewer, and garbage funds and declaring an emergency.
Could I get a motion to adopt ordinance 2023 as presented to council? Mr. Newkirk, is there a second? Mr. Bopp? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion. Hearing none, this constitutes the first reading of ordinance 2323. Next, ordinance 2423. Ms. Coon.
An ordinance transferring funds from the various water, sewer, and garbage funds transfer out to the transfer in funds of water utility reserve, sewer utility reserve, and garbage utility reserve funds and declaring an emergency.
Could I get a motion to adopt ordinance 2423 as presented to council? Ms. Colby, is there a second? Second, Mr. Newkirk. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Discussion. Hearing none, this constitutes the first reading of ordinance 2423. Next, for your consideration, we will have ordinance 2523. Ms. Coon.
An ordinance to revise the codified ordinances by adopting current replacement pages thereto and declaring an emergency.
I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2523 as presented to council. Mr. Peters, is there a second? Ms. Colby, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion. Ms. Coon.
This is just our quarterly update of the codified ordinances. You can see on there were no state changes, but there were still our local changes, so we need to get those updated.
Mr. Schwackhammer.
I would ask that council consider waiving the 3 readings so that we can get our online ordinances in line.
Mr. Peters?
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Is there a second? Mr. Crabtree, seconds. Discussion. Ms. Coon?
Foster. Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bopp.
Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bopp.
Yes.
Ordinance 2523 is duly adopted. Next, we'll move to the resolutions portion. We'll begin with Resolution 2123, first reading. Ms. Coon?
A resolution authorizing the City of Jackson to file an application with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the Small Cities Grant Program for pavement rehabilitation and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 2123 as presented to council? Mr. Bopp, is there a second? Mr. Newkirk, seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Discussion. Mr. Schwackhammer.
This is for a grant application. I know it has a deadline of June 15th. I would ask for council to consider so that we can go ahead and move forward with this. We've been very successful in the past 2 years in receiving them. So please help us out again.
Other discussion? Mr. Peters?
I move to suspend the rules.
Motion by Mr. Peters to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Crabtree, seconds. Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bopp.
Yes.
Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bopp.
Yes.
Resolution 2123 is duly adopted. Next for council consideration is Resolution 2223. Ms. Coon?
A resolution of the Legislative Authority of the City of Jackson authorizing the mayor or the Director of Public Service and Safety to enter into a contract with the Gallia County Commissioners to provide housing of City of Jackson prisoners in the Gallia County Jail as needed and declaring an emergency.
Could the chair get a motion to adopt Resolution 2223 as presented to council? Mr. Peters? Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Colby? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion. Mr. Swackhammer.
Yes, Gallia County is expecting to be open to take inmates or individuals needing incarceration in the next couple months. The fee of $100 that they're charging is about $25 a night more than we've paid other places, but it's also at our back door. I no longer need to travel 3 hours away to take prisoners or if we've got female prisoners, taking 2 individuals, paying the overtime. This is, even at $100 a night, is going to be a big savings for us if the need is there.
Thank you, Mr. Swackhammer. Other discussion?
Mr.
Peters.
We didn't get as good a rate as someone else that I heard on the radio this morning that only had to pay $80 a night. So I don't know what government entity got a contract with Gallia County for that. I would have to suspend the rules because I think we've been in a situation where we didn't have anywhere to take anyone. So the more options we have, I think the better off we are.
Is there a second? Mr. Newkirk, second. Other discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster. Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Ball.
Yes.
Discussion? Ms. Coon?
Foster. Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Ball.
Yes.
Resolution 2223 is duly adopted. Next, for council consideration, is Resolution 2323, first reading. Ms. Coon?
A resolution of the Legislative Authority of the City of Jackson, Ohio to accept the bid of McKee Paving and Sealing LLC in an amount not to exceed $1,178,835.75, plus an amount of up to 30% of additional quantities at the bid prices for the 2023 City of Jackson Street Paving Program, as it was the lowest and best responsive bid submitted, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Coon. Chair would like to entertain a motion to accept Resolution 2323. Is there a motion to adopt? Mrs.
Yes.
Colby, is there a second? Mr. Newkirk, seconds. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discussion. Mr. Swackhammer.
Yes, we went through the formal bidding process. We did have 3 bidders. They were the lowest bidder of the 3. Timeline here for me is relatively important simply because part of the Hillcrest Pool, where we're getting the parking lot and the basketball courts resurfaced the basketball, and we got some new extended parking lot up there. They, I'd like to get this done and get up in the fence prior to the pool opening up Memorial Day weekend. So I'm going to ask for some consideration here to move forward so that we can give them a letter to proceed expeditiously.
Ms. Colby.
Yeah. I move to suspend the rules.
Ms. Colby made a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Mr. Crabtree, seconds. Discussion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Peters.
it says plus an amount up to 30% of $1.1 million is a lot of money. Explain that, if you could, to us.
We didn't want, in case the bids would come in extremely high like they did first time last year, or even lower than expected, we wanted to be able to adjust the amount of streets we pave in there to meet our funding that we have available. So if the bids had come in higher than expected, we could do up to 30% less of these streets, and they'd still have to do them for the same price per ton. And if the bids came in lower than we expected, we could have them do up to 30% more streets and still hold their same price. That's the reasoning for that. It's not our intent. It's not our intent to spend 30% more, but to adjust the volume to meet our budget.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's on all the quantities, and they're broken down by curbs or by street and.
It's
tonnage
basically
and
on the
all that.
tonnage of asphalt that we buy. Yeah. Basically.
So you could have 30% over on one thing, but not the others.
Bob?
Does this amount, does this cover the list that we got? Does this pretty much cover
The list that we give you is the list that they bid, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so the price the base price here is to do those streets.
Okay.
Yep. And like I said, had the bids been a lot higher, then we would have probably only done 70% of that list. And had the bids been lower, we may have added to that list, up to 30% more volume. But it come in pretty much right out of expected, so that's pretty much what we expect to pave.
Other discussion? Ms. Kuhn?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree. Bach.
Yes.
Other discussion? Ms. Kuhn?
Foster.
Yes.
Colby.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Newkirk.
Yes.
Crabtree.
Yes.
Bach.
Resolution 2323 is duly adopted. Thank you, council, for your work. Next, we will look at correspondence. Ms. Kuhn, anything?
I think David's gonna take my correspondence, or Randy. Randy was gonna take my correspondence.
Mayor, are you going to take the correspondence there from?
Yes, let me find it here, sorry. Council, the city and council, particular, had received a question from the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities to let you all know that Buckeye Community Services has applied for a license to house 8 persons with developmental disabilities at the new home there on Pearl Street, at 265 Pearl Street. The Ohio Department of Development Disabilities will inspect this facility compliance with the department's licensure standards. They send this letter to council to make you aware that you may send any written comments regarding this license to their office by May 11th. So you don't have a lot of time if you want to reach any comments to them. And then that whatever, they'll make those findings, take that into consideration on their decision regarding the issue of that license. And that's really all it was a notice. And you can reach out to us if anybody wants to reach out to them about that, issuing that license. That's all.
The other thing that's listed there is the transfer of liquor license, the T-Rex. Did you want to comment on that, Mayor?
Yeah, there's really nothing for council here on this tonight. We had thought this was a notice of an application change to council where we get that periodically, and then council has kind of similar things where they can object to it if they want or require a hearing. That is not what this is. This is just an application, and doesn't need council action. If this application goes through, then later they will be sending that to council. And that's all there is on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, looking at old business, is there anything council has that, from old business to discuss? Hearing none, we'll move to new business. We'll start with Mr. Swackhammer. I think the first item you have there is a water sewer tap on Chillicothe Pike.
Yes, the Good Shepherd Wesleyan Church at 10595 Chillicothe Pike has requested a water sewer tap. They are outside the city, and the letter is to whom it may concern. My name is Scott Moore, and I'm the head trustee at the Good Shepherd Wesleyan Church and Christian Life Academy, CLA. We are located on Chillicothe Pike in Jackson, and I am seeking approval to run a private sewer line from the church/school and tap into the city sewer system near Northview Elementary School. Enrollment at CLA has increased tremendously in the past few years and it is looking to increase even more from the 2023-24 school year. To keep us up with enrollment, CLA needs to upgrade our septic system. Our best option would be to get connected to the city sewer system. We would like to obtain the city's approval for a tap first before we incur any engineering cost. Tapping into the city sewer would be a major improvement for the school and a much more efficient way for the school to deal with sewage. This would also be a benefit to the city. CLA would be paying, be a paying customer in the coming years. The location that he's referring to is there on Chillicothe Pike between the elementary school, Northview, and the church, right there just north of it. That is where the first manhole is. We would need to spec out to them what type of connection and everything, and it would be up to them to obtain all the easements and other activities associated with bringing it there. All we would be doing is giving them a location and how we expected the hookup to be at that location.
Mr. Peters?
Does this prevent or encourage anyone from point A to point B tapping into this system?
Well, it would be a private, so it would be, if they were inside the city themselves do not allow laterals like that to have multiple individuals. You know, there are still a few out there because in the past it was allowed. So we do have some of those out there, but it's been in place for many years that each resident, each commercial building has to have their own lateral coming into the sewer line, city sewer line. I guess that could be part of the consideration, and maybe should be, that this isn't a private lateral that they allow multiple people to tie into. But that would be something we would need to spec out.
Isn't that a pump station situation?
Yeah.
It would have
They-
back pressure on it. You would.
Yeah, they would have to have a
Everyone that
lift
tied into
station
it.
to get it there.
Yeah, but everybody tied into it, there would be back pressure on theirs if it was
Yeah.
a private line tied into that.
Yeah, it's not a gravity line.
Yes.
So what is your opinion of the,
We allowed the rehab center out there, what's the name of it? I forget.
W4C or?
I think W4C did it a couple years ago. We have the capacity. There's really no reason not to do it. We just pick up another sewer customer. I don't see a downside for us. It's going to be very expensive for them, but then there'll be a monthly paying sewer customer.
do we need to have that form?
Motion, you would like that motion on that?
Yeah, because I wanted to get it documented through the minutes and then approved next time around.
I think that's what they normally do for out this,
Yeah.
just pass a motion.
I move to grant the information.
To buy the sewer tap?
Yes.
Is there a second? Mr. Newkirk seconds. Other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Next, Mr. Swackhammer?
Yeah, I do have, the second one I have is property owner is David Brown. The address is 0 Putnam. It is the property at the end of Putnam. It is for a residential. They are outside the city. And he is asking to be able to tie in, since we're extending new sewers out in that area, tie in. I did, Mayor had asked me about, is there a water tap out there? And we are showing a water tap at that property. So we do know that we will have a way of measuring it.
Is there a motion to allow the sewer tap?
That's why we put the lines in there, so I move to that as well.
Is there a second? Mr. Newkirk seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. I think next I had a note from Mr. Swackhammer's discussion earlier about the FEMA property and the tree planting. If you want to expound on that, or?
Yeah, the city did receive multiple partials years ago during a FEMA buyout of residences that were flooded on multiple occasions through the insurance program. Those properties were then demoed, and they've been sitting vacant in the city's possession. We've incurred just additional mowing costs year after year since then. We had looked at opportunities to what could be done with those, and after getting a copy of the FEMA property restrictions, which was not filed on the properties at the time of transfer, there's very limited things that you can do with them. So the items that I mentioned here before is something, the city doesn't have a conservation area that it can control. We know the Tree Commission is very active in wanting to plant additional trees. They'll actually be coming up with a plan to provide to the mayor for suggestions here in the next month on future development. But I believe this is an area that, yes, there are some residents in the area, but the majority of it is non-residential. We could go in there, plant the right type of trees, keep it knocked down and in decent shape until those trees start to take off, and then let it be developed more into a conservation area. It seems to be one of the best uses of that property long-term versus just continuing to try to mow it like a lawn, which is difficult, and in those areas also. So that was what I was trying to get a feel for from council, what your thoughts were. And if that's what we're going to do, then I'd have asked Mr. Kirby to actually identify those partials with me and bring them back to council to set aside in some type of conservation.
Questions? Mr.
Are
Peters?
these properties in the second ward, like?
The majority of these properties that we'd be looking at, yes, are over on the, at the end of Mitchell, or Mill Street, at the end of Central, across to Logan, I believe it's there, in behind Osco.
Other questions?
Just like to hear some feedback from council on the topic.
I think it's a good idea.
Is there a certain type of tree that you would plant in those?
Something like water. Something like water.
Weeping willows or, but, I mean, is there, would it be a white pine scenario or would it be a hardwood or?
Reach out to professionals for that.
Yeah.
The tree commission.
Well, I think over there, one of the main things would be how close you are to some of the water ways and stuff so you didn't plug any of them up. But it'd be a nice developed area, I think, in a few years. It may take 10 or 15 years of patience to get them to a nice stand, but we've been mowing it for 30 years as it's been.
Other discussion?
Mr. Kirby, then, can we get together and bring something to council next meeting?
Absolutely.
Next, I have a note on the Horizon building. We were talking about the fiber optic building there. What would that be, Dickinson? Would that be the area, street side, Mr. Swackhammer, or what would
Did we
that?
already talk about that? Did we already talk about that?
Well, I thought we were gonna bring something up, that you were wanting something brought up for that.
Well, we did, and we kind of already talked about. Cindy has the property description there to send out to council.
Anything else in new
Ryan,
business?
hey, Dan, I'm sorry. Ryan said that was Joe's department. Let him worry about that.
Yeah.
Anything else under new business to be brought before council? Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Peters, is there a second? Mr. Bob? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Thank you.